and welcome to another episode of the Financial Secrets Revealed Season 2 podcast, where we are lifting the lid on financial abuse. Today I am joined by two lovely ladies from the Women's Legal Service in Queensland. Now, I was lucky enough to attend the Gold Coast Tourism International Women's Day event recently, which beautifully supported the Women's Legal Service. So would love to introduce to you financial counsellor Daniela Henninger and principal lawyer, among many other things, Natasha McGrow. So Natasha, can you tell us a little bit more about your role and what you do for the Women's Legal Service, please?
Okay, so I'm a solicitor at Women's Legal Service, and I'm the practice director for our domestic violence units across southeast Queensland, which is Caboolture, Brisbane and the Gold Coast. And also in that portfolio, I look after the financial abuse prevention unit, and that's where Daniela as financial counsellor sits alongside a financial capability worker.
So Daniela, can you share how you came to be part of this service?
I came almost 20 months ago to the Women's Legal Service as financial counsellor. There was this newly established unit for financial abuse. I worked previously in the same position and as financial counsellor and supporting women affected by domestic violence or want to leave an abusive relationship.
Now, I hear Queensland's a little bit behind some of the other states in tackling this. So how did the Financial Abuse Prevention Unit, it sounds like a NCIS episode, how did that get started?
Okay, so originally it was started because we'd identified that many women that were accessing our service just for the domestic and family violence advice or the family law advice were also suffering from financial disadvantage. And also this was linking into coercive controls around finances. So it really probably came out of that originally. Originally it was going to be more around this consumer credit and mortgage difficulties that women were facing, working alongside a financial counsellor. But more and more over the time as it's progressed with Daniela in the role, it's become very much more financial counselling, doing all that advocacy around debt waivers and things like that.
And Daniela, it's a newer role for you, but what does your role entail? I mean, from when somebody calls the Women's Legal Service to ending up sitting down with you, what does that journey look like for them?
So when we have our initial appointment, we will figure out in which current situation the woman is. So she could be either in exit planning, so she's still with the respondent or in the relationship, or she is waking up in the morning in a refuge because she was taken off the home overnight with children, or she would have settled in a new life but still ending up with relationship debts. You know, over the years, some people are still struggling with debts from the relationship. So I will figure out where is she at, and then we do a plan.
Excellent. So do you have any statistics on how many women who are victims of domestic violence are also victims of financial abuse?
Well, when it comes to our financial abuse prevention unit, 100% of those clients, some sort of usually around 100 in a 6-month period, will be experiencing some type of financial abuse or financial coercion, debts racked up in their name that aren't theirs, purchases of vehicles in their name that they don't have access to, spur debts, for example, tolls and all these sorts of things. So just about every single one of those women within our business. In terms of statistics, like statewide, I don't have those to hand, but certainly for our unit, every single one of them.
So now I think we heard about.
Danielle.
Yeah, I think we heard about 98%. And look, it is not just in the relationship; it's also after the relationship ending. You know, like the man or the father doesn't pay child support, or there's a lot of interactions afterwards as well. So it's almost. I would always say our client has some little point of financial abuse.
Wow, that's disheartening to say the least. But when you realise that it is I suppose, the most incredible form of control that you can have over another person. I mean, amongst all the, emotional and coercive control, financial makes the most sense for keeping someone where you want them to be. Now, the story of beautiful Hannah Clark and her children has obviously hit the news again in the last couple of weeks as the inquest has come out, and these words coercive control we're starting to hear so much more from. Natasha, can you give us a bit of an overview about what that entails and what people should be on the lookout for? I know there's now a list of pointers that you can tick off. I think was there 39 or 41 different points that you can spot?
There's a whole host of behaviours that you would call coercive control, and sometimes we think in society that this is physical control, but actually it's around psychological aspects of control, emotional control. It can be as simple as, not as simple as, but it can be preventing women from going out to a job. It can be sabotaging their job interviews. It can be calling at work and trying to disrupt work. It can be control over the finances. It can be control. Well, it is just this control. It can be limiting people's access to their own friends and like family and friend groups. Control over mobile phones. You name it. It's just everything that is about control and power and making that woman, I suppose, feel powerless.
I suppose some of the things that you mentioned, isolation seems to come up very, very regularly, that the controller or the perpetrator tries to take all the support networks away from someone, which makes them very reliant on the abuser. So do you see that a lot as part of coercive control?
Yeah, we do. A lot of, and of course with Women's Legal Service, a lot of the women that we assist are from the COLD background, so culturally and linguistically diverse, or First Nations women, so they have some additional unique challenges, which can make them feel even more isolated, and in some ways, they can be feeling isolated within their own communities.
That makes it harder, doesn't it, when there's minority groups on top of, and very coming from patriarchal societies as well, where it's very much that the man is the head of the family and is in control historically. Daniela, who refers clients to you, and at what stage do they come and sit down with a financial counsellor?
So clients will be referred mainly from the local DV service, also domestic violence service, or from refuges. We have self-referrals where women call us and just Google, and find our website and come to us. Intensive family support, also organizations. We get referrals. We have a health justice partnership with the hospitals, so we get referrals from them. Yeah.
So
different streams, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So when you first sit down with a woman, she's obviously been in a DV situation by the sound of it already. She's perhaps ended up in a shelter or had to flee a situation. She must be in quite an emotional state to end up where she is. What is the process when you first meet? I mean, is it very matter of fact, get down to tin tacks? I mean, I'm sure there's lots of boxes of tissues around when you're going through these emotionally charged situations with people.
When a client sees me, they had already some support, probably from the domestic violence service, from a social worker, legal. So honestly, finance comes almost to the end towards. I always would encourage to put it far more on the beginning, just because we can then easier interact with long-term things like protecting the credit rating, the credit file. But until the woman sees me, she had already a lot of other support prior. We do, usually we start with the budget. That's the hardest part. No one wanna really see and hear these things, But I think sometimes it's better to see it black on white and to work on it, because I can't be shocked anymore. I guess I saw almost everything you can see. So I think for everything is a solution. And always people, I always say to the women, look after yourself, get a job, stay healthy. This is more important as some debts. I can solve the debts. We can contact the creditors. We will find some solutions. Depends if the budget of the woman can make some payments, or we will ask for a debt waiver, Depends on how the debt occurred. Was it coercion? Did he set it up? Was it fraud? Or was it just simple paying groceries and fuel and put it on a credit card? Even now, banks will really have a look into this if it was for daily expenses because of the abuse,
Wow, that's good to know. I had a client walk into my office recently, and I'm sitting down doing my usual discovery meeting where I'm, taking down all the facts. And she had separated from her husband within the last few months. And it turned out that he had taken all the assets from the family home, but all the debts were in her name. Is this the sort of thing, whereas I'm like, right, we're getting a lawyer, this isn't fair. And she's like, look, he probably doesn't even have the assets anymore. And she was prepared, I think we're up to the tune of $75,000 to go, you know what, I'm just going to put a payment plan in place and deal with it so I don't have to deal with him. Do you find that sort of attitude is normal because they don't want to face it? Or is there help for these women where they can go, you know what, that's not right, he should be responsible for some of these, and there is a way to help prove that?
I mean, maybe Natasha want to start the legal part first and then do the financial part?
Well, from a family law perspective, depending on what sort of property there might be, or if there's any superannuation, there's always a way of, if there are enough assets, of doing a property application and maybe looking into that. So where you've had wastage, or there's debts, plus there's assets, and you can just sort of do a bit of a sum, I suppose, about whether there can be some kind of asset split or property split, or perhaps payment from like a superannuation split. We would always explore that first. But I mean, as you know, in this space where you've got debts in your name, that can be quite a difficult sort of road to go down. And this is, of course, where you need that specialist advocacy that a financial counsellor can bring around that. And I think one of the things that would always worry me is when people are talking about going bankrupt or entering into debt agreements. We would always suggest that people get just a bit of a legal advice around that. Especially with one of the matters that we've had, it's a little while ago now, but we had a couple with a loan, and obviously we're representing the woman who's left an abusive relationship, and the loan was a joint loan, and he went and entered into a debt agreement where that loan was sold over to the debt collectors, basically, and then of course the bank are then chasing her for the loan. So even though on paper people say, well, we won't chase you for this because he's entered into this debt agreement, that's not necessarily how it works. And so these women can still have these debts hanging over them, even though at the end of the day they probably really weren't hers. One of the great things about having a financial counsellor like Daniela is that she just goes into each and every credit provider, talks about the circumstances as best she can to hopefully pull at some heartstrings, but also demonstrate quite often that there's been an issue around how the lending has occurred, or some kind of sleight of hand, I suppose, on his part, and this is how she's ended up in this situation. And that's the toughest work, but it's also the work that I think gets the best results. Just that. It's relentless. Daniela's relentless with this, but that's what it is.
You want a bull terrier on your side, don't you, when you're going through that?
You do. You need to be a squeaky wheel, and that's how we get those results.
So, Daniela, when you go negotiate with a creditor, what sort of outcomes are you getting for clients who are obviously overwhelmed and not really sure where the next dollar's going to go when they get it in, how it's got to be split?
So for example, some women come and say, oh, I have so many debts and I just want to get bankrupt. Bankruptcy is not a solution for me. I had 2 bankruptcies in 10 years, but they were already signed just to send off.
Yep.
Because there are millions of other options before. I mean, 10 years ago, financial abuse wasn't really in the mouth of everyone. It's coming very up just recently, the last 3-4 years, where we talk about this and people are aware that this is a form of domestic violence, you know. But when I contacted creditors, in the meantime, they are very sensitive towards this topic. They even have fundings and provide financial help as well. Like the NEP is providing up to $3,000 grant if a woman leaves the relationship. So this would put towards bond and rent and whatever she needs, you know. So we have a lot of change in this sector. What I want is, firstly, we need to know how the debt was occurred and did the woman have any benefits out of it. So often what the respondent would do is, in the evening, he would take the phone and apply for a loan in her name, you know. So this is the most difficult part, because the woman is afraid that something might happen if she says no. On the other side, she knows exactly that she can't pay because it's in her name. So, and this is when we find the evidence. What was it? We want to have a statement from her. Possibly she talked to a psychologist the last couple of years about this. So we gather all the evidence and we speak to the creditors, and depends if it really was coercion or fraud, they will waive it. If it was a normal debt, and her budget shows a little bit, we maybe ask for a debt waiver and end up with $1,000 left and make a small payment arrangement, and she's debt free maybe in half a year or in a couple of months, you know. So this is this is my goal. If a woman sees me, I want that she has an even budget when she leaves me and no debts. So this is it's my personal goal, because the women want to start new, you know. There's often kids involved, you know. They need every dollar. It's so important.
Yeah, and I think what we've experienced is that not only are these creditors more open to helping because they're understanding the issues a lot more, but the women, if they have genuinely taken steps to try and resolve these issues, they really are living on a shoestring budget, and it can show that. They're so much more willing to help then, aren't they, Daniela?
Mm-hmm.
So in best case scenarios, you can actually get the debt waived when you can prove coercion or control or fraud in some instances.
And I mean, it makes no sense. If a woman is just struggling with the budget, 0 and 0 or even a minus, why would I hang a $20,000 debt over her? For the banks, it's also just administration costs, you know. So there's a lot of option here.
Which must be wonderful for some to hear, because I suppose when you're in that spiral, it's very difficult to see a light at the end of the tunnel. So to know that someone is advocating on your behalf and has taken over that financial burden of all the dealings with the creditors, that must be such a weight off people's shoulders to have you in their corner, Danielle. We need a lot more Danielles. Can we clone you?
Yes, you just need to speak to the government to get some funding.
We need lots and lots more of you. Do you have like an anonymous case study that you could share of somebody who came to you and how that worked out for them over time and how long it took and what the outcomes were?
Mm-hmm. I looked into one where I think lots of women can identify. It's the long-term relationship debt. You know, like this particular woman left the relationship in 2009. And since then, she's just struggling with the financial abuse from before that and afterwards. You know, he never paid child support. So she took out one credit card after the next one just to buy groceries, pay the rent, pay electricity. So it was always hanging over her head. So when I saw her last year, she had 6 debts left.
So we're talking 11 years after exiting the relationship.
Yeah, and still 6 debts left. So I had it here. So she had two bank accounts. And as I say, the companies, okay, that we just see a little bit where it come from. We had two bank accounts with ANZ. One account they closed fully and had a full debt waiver of $3,300. And the other account, because if you ask for a debt waiver, they close the bank account. But she need the bank account. So the other one, they credited $500 towards the account and left it open. So this was very generous. We had another debt waiver of $2,100 with the Commonwealth Bank. And they left a $1,000 debt open, and she's paying it off with $25 a fortnight. But no further fees and no further interest charged.
Oh, you'd never get ahead otherwise, would you?
Yeah, because with
25 wouldn't even cover
$25, exactly, $25 would not even cover the interest, you know. Then we had another debt with Hum, and this was a solar system on an old house they had to sell. But because the house doesn't exist anymore and the solar system, she doesn't have a benefit out of it, they waived the whole entire almost $4,000.
Wow.
Then we had the Go MasterCard. This was purely used for groceries, and they waived this in full for $1,400. And then we had another debt with NEP Bank, and they waived $700 and $700. They gave half away, part waiver, and the other $700 we pay off also with $25 a fortnight. So even if she has to pay two more debts for a couple of months, she has $75 in surplus, and plus we'll have $50 more when she paid it off. So, and she was very grateful about this because she was struggling now 11, 12 years for the debts, and it was solved. It was very quickly solved. I think we just worked together 4 months, and this is quite short in my work. And she was amazed. She said, if I would have done this 10 years ago,
That was my. Oh my God! I wish I'd seen you sooner.
Yeah.
And this is why I say some people just come 2 years after they saw a lawyer and a social worker, and sometimes would be helpful a little bit earlier, you know.
Yep. So one of the best tips then is get straight to see a counsellor as soon as possible. And look, most people I find, whether you're in I suppose, a poor financial position or a good one, the word budget just freaks people out. And whether you're in a good situation or not, I mean, people can make lots and lots of money and still not make ends meet because they don't know how to spend their money. There's more there, so they spend more. So started to use the word spending plan instead of budget so people don't glaze over the minute I mention it. It's all in the positioning. So how important do you find it to know what's coming in and know what's going out? And I often, people will say to me, oh, I'm self-employed, or I don't ever know, I don't have a regular income, so I can't do a budget. And to me, the know your numbers part has always been about, that doesn't matter if you know what's going out. Because if some weeks it's less and some it's more, at least you know if it costs you $675 a week to live, whether you're up or down, you know that's what it costs you to wake up. It might be $1,675 or whatever the case may be. But I think that just knowing that number, although it might be confronting to start with, is so important. Do you find that once they get over the shock of actually doing it, that it is a relief?
Yeah, also we name it income and expenditure.
We've all got to just rejig this, don't we?
Yeah, people feel judged, and this is something, this is why I mostly do my appointments via video call as well, because I'm supporting women all over Queensland, and it's just giving a little bit more better connection, when you see each other. I think what's important when you do the income and expenditure is there is so much help outside what people are not aware of. Firstly, I do approximately, I was saying before, 6 to 8 budgets a week. So I know what is the average. If someone tells me pay for the mobile phone $150 a fortnight, I know that's out of relation. This is out of. So, but what I also know, what I check is, are concessions applied? And depends on what for card she has, there would be concession on her electricity and on her car ratio. Yeah, so people are not aware of this. Then if some people have debts with the electricity provider, we can apply for a HEAS grant, a home electricity emergency grant. It's at $720 every 2 years, you know. If women say they pay $150 for the car insurance, I would encourage them and say, look, you need to do a check and see if there's something cheaper, you know. If you have the phone contract, I would say, look, when is it due? When is the 2 years over? When can we look for some other options, you know? And later then we go to the debts and then we make a plan. And first we always pay off the debts with the highest interest. This is what we focus on. And I explain this and then we make a plan. And sometimes it's working, but what I feel, the woman has then a guideline, you know, she knows exactly that's the option. If I do this, and then I calculate, look, by July we are there. And maybe at the end of the year, we are debt free. And then I get emails and say, oh, you will be so proud of me.
Oh,
Yes,
bless.
you know? So, and this is a good thing, you know. And a lot of people, honestly, they say, oh, I didn't want to hear what you said. I didn't like it, what you said, you know. But on the end of the day, I would be not here today if I didn't hear it, you know. And I know
It's a difficult
it's
conversation.
it's a difficult job to be sensitive and but really say what's going on. And I always believe knowledge is power. We can't change if we just stuck the head in the sand, you know.
Yep. One of the really cool things, like you said, when sitting down with the debts and working out all those with the highest interest rate, apart from doing that, one of the first things I tell my clients is ring them up and ask for a better rate to start with. I mean, my son with his own, I think he bought a dirt bike, as all, you know, late teenage boys do. You know, he rang up the provider and they halved the rate over the phone. I said, look, just find another rate. You know, there's a personal loan going at this place. I'm looking at going there. And to keep the business, they just did it over the phone. So there's always options, isn't there, to, you know, to go somewhere, look elsewhere. I mean, if somebody wants your business,
If you don't ask, you don't get.
yeah, exactly. So I get a lot of people who I suppose are friends of people in abusive situations, and you know, the norm in the past has always been we don't interfere, it's none of our business, it's a family matter, it's private. And I remember the case after another big Queensland murder hit the news for Gerard Baden Clay and his wife Alison, that the parents ran a campaign called Say Something. And they'd witnessed all the little bits and pieces over the years, how her shoes had been so worn out, how he'd take credit cards off her, how she wore the same clothes all the time. And in the end, they did the same thing. It's a private matter, they're a married couple, we won't interfere. And, you know, eventually she was murdered when she wanted to go back to work and start her life again. So I suppose there's that fine line of how can a friend go, look, what I'm seeing is making me really uncomfortable, you know, can they lose the friendship over it? Is it worth it? What can people who are looking from the outside in do to help?
Gosh, that's tricky. I think it's really tricky. I think it is trying to open up the conversation, but doing it in such a gentle way. And it might be as simple as noticing that your best friend doesn't spend more than $6 when they go out for a coffee. Just asking the question, how are things going for you? Are you safe at home? Is there anything that I can do to help? Look, it's really a social work question, which I'm just not the best person to answer, I think. But that connection with your family, your friends, your work colleagues, I think that's just the most important thing. So when we're talking about Alison Baden Clay going back out to work, you would hope that if that was happening, she was going to be around colleagues that are going to pick up on this stuff. I think as a society, particularly women, are just so much better at identifying this and those small signs. But I think for all of us, it's talking about it more, giving a forum in a workplace to talk about these things and make people feel it's okay that they can discuss it. And also having like just trusted people within organisations I'm talking about work, obviously, but even just having trusted people in an organisation that you can suggest someone go and talk to. I don't know is the answer.
Yeah, and
So,
it is so
difficult.
nuanced, isn't it? I suppose there's some people out there who are just happy to go, right, things aren't looking right to me. Tell me what's going on. To
Yeah,
those who tread very softly,
yeah,
depending on the relationship that you have. I did hear one really good tip though, if you think or know that the person is in that situation, is to be able to offer your own tech to them. So if you'd like to look up a shelter, if you'd like to look up for help, please use my devices,
yeah,
because if they are being monitored at home and their history searched and they don't know how to delete that, that can be a really helpful thing to be able to, use someone else's tech so that they won't be caught looking for help or shelters or DV hotline numbers and that sort of thing. So I suppose that's one little way we can have practical assistance for those who are prepared to take it.
yeah.
Yeah, Daniela, do you have any other tips on? I suppose just send them to you. Is that is that the ultimate tip?
Well, I think a good tip is, because we are all know what to tell other people,
Oh yeah, we're experts on everyone
make
else's
it
life.
make it like when you sit together with your friend, you just say, look, my colleague, this and this and this happens, and see what the person tells you.
So the
But
storytelling, the
sometimes,
anecdote angle, right?
yes, you just tell their story, but you mean another person. And this is it's a good thing to think about the things.
So it will either trigger that they may like to share their story, or that perhaps they're not alone in going through what they're going through. So it just starts that thought pattern that
Yeah,
maybe I can reach out.
Yeah.
yeah. Maybe
I
where
think
they went to for help, whether it's 1-800 what is
respect.
1-800 respect, yeah, or the DV Connect number, or even Women's Legal Service helpline.
And I think also respecting that the woman in the situation is always in the best position to know how safe she is to be able to reach out. So like you said, we're always the expert, but sometimes we've just got no clue, do we, about what's going on.
That's it.
Well, thank you so much, ladies, for sharing all your insights with me. I've really enjoyed chatting with the both of you. Any final top tips as we sign out?
No.
No, we're done.
Oh,
Covered
yeah.
everything.
The only thing is there are so many support services in every direction. There is a lot of support. People just struggle to find the proper support in the area or the right person to speak to. So don't give up.
So that 1-800 respect can put you in touch with groups in your own particular area. Obviously, this is an Australia-wide number, but it can tell you wherever you are who to turn to for help.
That's right. That's right. And DV Connect, if you're in crisis, is good to call them. And of course, there are places like there are your local support groups. We would always say, talk to someone, get a safety plan, maybe, if that's what you need. Get that pre-separation advice that Daniela's talking about for financially being able to escape an abusive relationship, with the safety planning alongside. And that will set you up to hopefully leave safely.
Yeah, I think having those, when you're in a position to do it, having those documents or passports or copies of everything at least available that you've siphoned off to a friend or family member is a great idea. I know one lady was able to siphon off $20 a week out of the groceries to buy like a Woolies or a Coles card and leave it at a girlfriend's house, so that when she was in a position to finally go, she had grocery money for a couple of months while she couch surfed to be able to just see her through until she could set up all her Centrelink payments to move on.
Perfect.
So
That's one of Daniela's top tips.
excellent.
And there's more, but I don't want to disclose it here.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much again, ladies. I'm sure there's some nuggets in there for people who maybe, if they're not going through it, can help somebody else to escape if they need to. So thank you again.
Thanks very much, Amanda.
Thank you very much, Amanda.